से फुल कर दो।
इनफ वीडियो
चल रहा है।
क्या कह रहा है? हैविंग इनफ वीडियो
स्लो है इसलिए नहीं
error YouTube is not showing enough video to maintain smooth running.
अच्छा वो सर फॉर्म लेंगे तो सर का ग्रुप को इंट्रोड्यूस कराएंगे।
आप ही कराओगे?
बड़े सर को बोलो वो ज़्यादा अच्छे से एक बार करा दो।
मनोज एक बार देखना कैसा आ रहा है इसको YouTube पे लाइव।
YouTube खोल तुम नहीं देखो।
ये खोलने से ये इस वीडियो का आ रहा है स्टार्ट करके बैठे तो ऑडियो
यार ये विंडो कैसे अटकी है?
कौन सी? बंद करना होता है यहाँ से कहीं से, और या फिर यहाँ से कहीं से फुल स्क्रीन राइट क्लिक। फुल स्क्रीन में भी ये साइड में विंडो दिखाएगा एक्चुअली। इसमें यही तो इशू है तुम्हारे इस वाले में ऑप्शन नहीं आता। एक तो वो हाइड करने का भी ऑप्शन नहीं आता और तुम अपना कैमरा भी बंद कर सकते हो इसका।
वीडियो
कैसे अटकी?
इसे म्यूट करो।
फिर मैं वीडियो ऑफ कर देता हूँ। फुल सिग्नल दो सर, ठीक है सर, म्यूट है। यहाँ से on the
Our Honorable Chief Guest and Patron, Professor Udaykumar R. Yaragatti, Sir, Director MNIT Jaipur. Our respected HOD Sir, Department of Physics, MNIT Jaipur. Our tireless faculty coordinators, my departmental colleagues, researchers, students, and general body members from both this country and abroad, a very warm and cordial welcome to you all. We are overwhelmed at the participation numbers. In all, 505 total registrations have been made, out of which 470 of them are from India. They span each and every province of this country. Participants from 12 countries other than India has also registered, most notably Philippines, Japan, and United Kingdom. Most of our neighborly countries from South Asia and Southeast Asia has also joined in good numbers. So in all, there are 295 students and 210 teachers and faculty members have enrolled to this program of ours. Thank you all for making this event a grand success. So now let me briefly go through the motivation behind these webinars, the visions that our coordinators, we as a group have. So let me tell you that epidemics are very commonplace nowadays. They were of course there in older days too, like plague or black death, tuberculosis, etc. They were mostly caused by bacteriums, but nowadays they are mostly caused by viruses, starting from the famous or infamous Spanish flu, which outbroke in 1918. So modern day pandemics, in the last few decades, modern day pandemics span the names of SARS, MERS, EPD or Ebola, Zika, both bird and swine flu, etc. These are the few names that should convince ourselves that epidemics are fairly common these days. However, this epidemic of COVID-19 is actually unprecedented as compared to all others, both in scale and in span of time. It is therefore necessary that we learn about them. It becomes all the more necessary post the knowledge that the epidemics are oftentimes mishandled. Right from January this year, most advisories either went haywire or fallen flat. It is, of course, not our intention or deliberation to place the liability for this to any person or organization. It is rather wiser to admit that when facts change on the ground, we better change our minds. So, it is exactly the intention that we had in mind, encouraging minds to look closely at the subjects of public health and mathematical epidemiology. I hope that you will enjoy your stay here for 2 days online and you will enrich yourself learning something, understanding something, and be effectively contribute to the society at large at the time of emergency. I will again extend my warm and cordial welcome to you people. Thank you very much. Have a very nice afternoon.
हेलो, हाँ मंडल साहब, हेलो मंडल साहब, हेलो मंडल साहब,
हाँ नमस्ते नमस्ते सर।
हाँ नमस्कार। या मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है?
हाँ यहाँ एनकेन में तो पूरी आ रही है।
ओके ओके, फाइन फाइन फाइन।
हाँ, so we are all live, so you can start and make a presentation of the about the department.
Exactly.
Live.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Dr. Mandal. Respected Director Sir, Professor Udaykumar, Yaragatti Sir, Professor Kanupriya Madam, coordinators of this event, Dr. Shubhan Mandal, Dr. Kamlendra Avasthi, Dr. Manoj Kumar, Dr. Devashi Sarkar, all two resource persons, my colleagues of Physics Department, participants and dear students. On the behalf of the Head of Physics Department, MNIT Jaipur, and on my personal behalf, I wholeheartedly welcome you all for this two-day webinar on COVID-19 risk management and simulation efforts. We all are affected by coronavirus in some or other way. A virus that has completely changed the lifestyle of humans, and nobody knows how long still it will take for the life to become normal. It may take maybe months or years. We all are following the guidelines issued by Government of India regarding COVID-19 virus and how we can protect ourselves from it. This is the only thing which we can do in the present situation. As so far, there is no medicine available for the 100% cure of this virus. In this scenario, it is really important to understand the mechanism of transmission of this virus, and the events like this webinar will help us to know more about this virus. Simulation studies based on some assumptions will help us to develop a model on COVID-19 virus, which may be useful to develop its vaccination as well. We at Physics Department, MNIT Jaipur, are researching all kinds of topics such as experimental condensed matter physics, plasma science, accelerator science, cosmology, particle physics, high energy physics, etc. Besides teaching to BTech first year students, we are running a master course in physics also, basically an MSc in physics, with an intake of approximately 30 students. Our all faculty of physics department are guiding PhD research scholars in different area of physics and are also doing sponsored research in terms of research projects sanctioned by various funding agencies such as GST New Delhi, CSIR New Delhi, DRDO, ISRO, IUSC New Delhi, UGC, DA consortium centers, and other funding agencies. We at the Department of Physics, MNIT Jaipur, are having projects of more than 6 crores, and many research students are working under these projects in different laboratories. Our department is having a journey of more than 50 years and is one of the leading departments in the country in terms of teaching as well as research. Many high-end research equipments are available in our department in various labs, and they are open to be used by anyone freely. The faculty strength is also quite good, and we now total 40 faculty are working in the physics department. In recent years, there has been a significant development in the department, and the all credit goes to our director, sir, Professor Udaykumar Yaragatti, sir, and his vision. It is his dynamic leadership that not only the physics department, but the entire institute is growing at a very rapid rate. And recently, MNIT Jaipur secured a rank of 35 all over the country in NRF ranking conducted and issued by Ministry of HRD. I do not have words to express my gratitude to our director, sir, due to whom we are always feeling homely at MNIT campus. Sir, we always look forward to your encouragement and guidance in future also. I hope that the participants will be highly benefited by this two-day webinar on COVID-19. I would like to wish a great success to all the coordinators for this event. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mandal sir, I hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So in the meantime, audio-visual tour of MNIT at a glance video will be played in the YouTube channel and moderated by Dr. Devasish Sarkar. Please wait for it.
तुम बोल रहे हैं अरे
sound नहीं आ रहा उसमें तो sound
आप जा रहे हो
देखो पीछे की साइड है उसी से साउंड आ रही है?
इंद्राणी को फोन करेंगे तो पाँच बजे থাকিস ঠিক আছে ओके ओके ओके
सर ये मेरा चार्जर है, ये वाला।
ये आपका क्या
हाँ, शायद दूसरा वाला होगा आपका।
शायद वो मेरा वहाँ उधर लैपटॉप में जो है
वो आपको चाहिए कौन सा वाला, मुझे तो पता नहीं।
क्योंकि ये डेल का ही है वो, क्योंकि दो चार्जर लगे थे वहाँ पे।
नहीं, मेरा एक्चुअली वो ज़्यादा है, क्या बोलते हैं इसको,
वोल्टेज ज़्यादा है।
हाँ।
ये आपके लैपटॉप में मेरा लग गया हो जाता है।
पता नहीं कौन सा है आपको बताइए। अगर कहाँ लगे तो इसीलिए नहीं।
হ্যাঁ মানে যখনই মানে আমি তোকে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে ইনফর্ম করতে থাকবো
इंटरनेट भी ऐसा है. वो अच्छा भी तो बन गया.
वीडियो नहीं जा रहा है तो क्या कर सकते हैं. तुम अपना गाना प्ले करने यही वाला
पता नहीं चल जाएगा.
चलिए ना यहाँ से
Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Sir, Rahul is speaking.
You can hear me, but I think you can't see me now.
Sir, we can see you, sir. We can see you on my laptop, computer. I can see you, sir.
Okay. Anyway, I can't see myself there, no problem. Okay. So, very good afternoon. I welcome all the participants for this webinar on COVID-19. The sub-theme is risk management and simulation efforts. I especially welcome Dr. Indranil Mukhopadhyay, Dr. Kaushik Samanta, the speakers, Professor Mukhopadhyay from Jindal Global University and Professor Kaushik from IIT Bhubaneswar. I am very grateful to you, my friends, for accepting our invitation and give your precious and valuable time to this webinar, which is going to be the trend in future. Earlier, it used to be on some special occasions only we were going on online or online webinars or seminars, where it is like one person speaking to himself, seeing into a mirror, and you keep on talking without knowing the experience or the effect on the audience. And I am used to that. I see the face of the audience and seeing their face, whether they are understanding my topic or my talk, or are they getting bored. Then I used to be changing the body language or a subject, or make some puns or jokes into that, so that make the audience alive. So here it is a difficult task. You can hear only yourself and see only yourself. This coronavirus, as it is called, all of you know, the truth about it is, it's some fatty body with some pop-ups like crown. That's why it is called corona. And which was there and is and will be there in the nature or in the universe. But unfortunate thing is that this, for the last few months, it's creating havoc in the daily life of every human being across the world. As far as the scientists keep on telling that it is a non-growing or it's not an organic bacteria. It's just a virus. If it is not disturbed, it will die by itself. Or how to make it die is simple solution is put detergent onto that. So automatically the outer fat dissolves. So the virus also dissolves itself, or what we call in a low language, human language, it dies off. But what is the risk in all these things? The risk is ranging from sudden death to prolonged death to natural death to natural recovery also. The recovery process takes place within the human body if your body is immune to such bacteria. We remember, friends, right from our childhood. I'm talking about my age, I'm nearing 60. Before the television or the mobiles used to influence our life, we were totally on the roads, especially the Saturday afternoon and the Sunday, and most of the evenings. We used to play in ground in a good manner, if I say ground. Otherwise, we used to say we used to play in mud, drink whatever water available nearby. It may be from side pipeline which is moving on, or some small type of stream. Without knowing its originality, we were drinking that water. Looks like our immune system was very strong, or is strong because we can now sustain certain things. But the of late generation, were at home only, highly protected by their parents, highly protected by the high-profile schools where they were going, never allowed them to go for natural play or natural works. I'm adjusting my camera, I'm off screen, looks like.
This is real, this is life.
So the present generation kids, I call them, are not as immune as we were there. So we have to be extra cautious. That's what it comes in a risk management. I just heard one doctor who has experience of almost 40 to 50 years. He said not to panic more after seeing the media coverage and media background music, the way they show the virus in a dangerous manner. This virus is not airborne. It is a drop borne. It will be available in that small drop only. That is why you have been advised to wear mask whenever you go in a crowded place. We don't know who is carrying that virus, which may not be, you cannot judge it by just temperature of your body or some cough or some sneezing. But a person who is carrying this virus, whenever he talks, whenever he sneezes, or whenever he spits, the virus will be in the droplets. So whenever you are in public also, it's been advised not to touch the railings in the bus station or in any of the malls, because a drop from a sneeze of a COVID person might have been settled on that railing, and if you touch that, that will be transferred to you. Otherwise, if you don't touch it, it dies by itself, it dissolves. And a lot of us have the habit of touching our nose, eyes, without reason, or sometimes it may be itching. I have that habit. Now I have to be very clear after this. So when you had gone out and these droplets, if you are touched and the virus is in your hand, and if you touch your nose, face or whatever, it is an easy path for it to enter the not body but your respiratory system. The coronavirus will be active only in the respiratory system, and it creates havoc depending on your immunity system. If your immunity system is very strong, the risk is less. If your immunity system is below average, the risk is more. So how to make this what you call a risk management in the regular process? So the simple technologies: wear mask whenever you are going out, so that you are not spreading if you are a positive, or if somebody else is positive, you are not taking that, inhaling that drops. Then simple solution is, whenever you come home or wherever you are staying, just wash your hands for 20 seconds or 30 seconds with any of the soap, detergent soap or wash soap or toilet soap, whatever it is. So the outer layer of the coronavirus, the fatty layer, dies in this detergent liquid or detergent content. So the natural death hota hai. Then keep the distance of 3 feet. It's almost 1 meter if you are in public. But since India is overcrowded, we have 130 crore people, it's very difficult to maintain this 3 feet distance. But if wherever it is possible, you do it, or you don't go out till this pandemic goes off. And world across, people have been predicting about this. July end it will go, June end it will go. Now the latest is September end, November end. So let it go whenever it wants to go, but you have to be very careful. You have to do your own risk management. And you can hear all the dada, dadi, nana, nani's words also, your grandparents' words, like drink adrak ka chai, hot water, hot milk, tea, or green tea. Anyway, this is all good for your health only, no? Let the coronavirus be there or not there. These are all has been processed since hundreds and thousands of years. If you have a throat problem, they'll ask you to gargle with the salt water. Abito, I mean, nowadays it's become a habit. Earlier we were, the young kids were talking, mocking or making fun of people who are doing this gargling. अरे क्या आवाज निकालते हो, क्या खराबी करते रहते हो. Now it's become a part of life, and you have understood that. You also understood how to be always clean. We don't know whether the spoon you are using is clean or not, but at least your hands, when you wash, they will be surely clean. Correct? You will feel it. Yeah, my hands are very clean. So it is easy to eat with your hand. And what happens that also, these sanitizers you are using. So what happens, sanitizers won't kill the virus. But it's been a habit since for the 3 months you sanitization karo. Sanitization also kills the good bacteria in your hands, which really help you to the digestion and other process when you are eating with your hand. So if you are continuously putting a sanitizer into your hands and you are killing the good bacteria also. This has been told since ages. So the risk management depends on yourself. So that's a WhatsApp में तो group में चली रहा है कि health in your hands. So that is 100% true. If you are clean and you keep yourself clean, your hands clean, naturally you'll be healthy. So this is a simple thing. Don't go into any of the medicines if you are not positive. Since, because nowadays earlier they were tested and they have been in contact with the COVID patients. Now there are some people who have not even gone out of the house, not having contact with anybody with the COVID-19 positive patients, but still they are also having. So we don't know when this will come, because I always keep on telling the glaciers at the cold countries are getting started melting up. So we don't know how many thousands of viruses are hidden in that glacier, in the ice. When that is melting out, these viruses are coming out. Corona is one type of it. We don't know how many of such bacteria and viruses are in future coming out. So that we should be always ready to face them. We should make ourselves immune naturally. This is more important rather than taking chemical substitute to our body. So as an engineer, I can tell only about this. I don't know about the medicines or as a medical student. But at least I know that I have to keep my hands clean. I should not touch my nose, eyes and face regularly. You can touch after having your wash. Keep distance from the people. Don't touch any person or any people or any items outside when you go. So that is our natural phenomenon. Our traditional is when we meet people, we say namaskar, join hands to ourselves and namaskar. That's why we have a belief in that God is there everywhere. He or she is there in trees, in animals, and anybody. So if you are doing namaskar to your friend, it's nothing but you are doing namaskar to Almighty God, which is in him. If he is returning back the namaskara, again same thing. That's why we have the system called Aham Brahmasmi. Everywhere, everything, the Almighty is there. So whenever you are doing the namaskar, this is the theory what we learned. So this is also a risk management only, no? Which has been taught to us long back. So health in your hands, health in your body, health in your mind. Then of course, see, in India, let me talk about India. We are a crowded population. We don't follow the rules. We always have an attitude of opposing whatever the government does, whichever the government it is. But who is the sufferer? You yourself. If I break the rules, I'll be suffering. Government is not suffering. It's trying its best, because even I heard the doctors, some of my doctor friends saying that they never studied the detailed analysis of this coronavirus during their graduation time, neither their MD time. But suddenly this unknown system has come into picture where there's no control on that. You try something, temporarily it may be controlled, then again it grows. So nobody knows what is it. I remember there's one cleaning liquid. Since ages, everyone is using that. You also know that. I don't want to name it because I don't want to promote that brand. It's, if you see the precautions or backside in the which company it is, what all it will disinfect. It's clearly written that that liquid will disinfect coronavirus also, and this liquid is there for the last 100 years in the universe. So people knew that there is a coronavirus. For us, it is new because we are a non-medical students. We find something it is new. You take that liquid bottle. Everyone was using that earlier. You have a soap of that also. Go to that description of the content in that. It's already written. Disinfects coronavirus all. Provided 6 months back, if you would have read that, you would have just neglected. Now, if you read that array, it's already written that there's a coronavirus. So coronavirus is not new. It is there in the system. It has been activated more now. So friends, in this seminar of webinar of COVID-19, I hope 2020 only will be the last for that. Let it not extend, because our life, we expect to live up to 100 years. So healthy and a safe life is more important. If you keep on getting threatened by such type of viruses or bacteria, then you are most of the time will from this bacteria. So half of your mind will be working only on this. So come out of that. You have to live with the system, but in caution. So I have 505 participants, total registered participants here. Participants from India are 470, from all the states of my country. Participants from abroad, we have from different 12 countries, 12 different countries, mostly from Japan, UK, Philippines. Student participants are 295. So totally it is 505 participants. Very good. And you already seen MNIT, my NIT, on the video glance. It's a green campus, very green campus. Once the COVID goes off, and we pray for it has to go out, you can visit my campus, a lush green campus. So you can just walk in. You don't have to take a taxi or all. One handbag luggage, you can do the walk-in, good for your health. So come and stay here, enjoy our system. I'm very thankful to Professor Rahul Singalji, HOD of Physics Department.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Subyan Mandal, Debashish Sarkar, and Kamalendra Avasti also for introducing me to this webinar. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe. Don't get panic. We have to live with that. हमारा जिंदगी हमारे हाथ में है. जो हमारा नसीब में जो लिखा है वही होगा. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Am I audible? So now this is the time for vote of thanks. That means this is the time for being thankful to the people without whom this event wouldn't have been realized. So on behalf of the organizers, I take this opportunity to convey my heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Director, Sir, Professor Udaykumar R. Yaragatti, for sparing his precious time to make this event graceful. He is a real visionary. I should definitely mention that his recent efforts in containing COVID-19 in and around MNIT are commendable. He personally designed and developed various decontamination units, which have been already installed in various parts of Jaipur, and those are running really well. So as a part of the society, we sincerely appreciate your efforts, sir. We thank you, sir, for your consistent encouragement and support in organizing this event and for being a part of it. Thank you so much.
And I have my mask here. I wear it just to give a lecture. The original voice should be there. No, I have removed it. So please wear mask whenever you are in crowd.
My heartfelt thank goes out to Dr. Rahul Singal, sir, head of the Department of Physics, who has been exceptionally helpful in organizing the event. I sincerely thank the organizers for realizing the event and the speakers who have been kind enough to accept our invitation for this event. Our sincere thanks to the NKN for the help in broadcasting the event. Finally, on behalf of the organizers and MNIT Jaipur, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all of the participants from all over the world for making the event possible and truly a global one. I believe that you will definitely enjoy various sessions. Okay then, let the event begin. Thank you. So
yeah, Dr. Debashish, I would like to say a few words.
Yes, sir. Please go on.
Yeah, Honorable Director Sir, Professor Udaykumar Yaragatti Sir, I would like to say like the positivity which I have seen in you, sir. That is really a remarkable, sir. किसी भी काम को करने का जो आपने एक positivity हम लोगों को दिया है कि आप you should always be positive, you should think always in bright side. सर उससे जो काम करने का encouragement हम नए faculties को मिला है, वो सच में we have learnt a lot from you, sir, in last 4 or 5 years, sir. सर यहाँ पे आपके आने के बाद जो इतना changes MNIT में आया है, MNIT ने इस बार 35 रैंक मिला है हमें NIRF रैंकिंग में, सर. सर it is only because of your vision, sir. सर आपने लोगों को जो बताया है कि आप पॉजिटिव रह के काम करेंगे और इवन आप अपने जो आपके विरोधी हैं उनको भी अपना बना सकते हैं. You forget all about the revenge or what in past people have done with you. You start with a new morning. So that is really a good thing, sir. We have learned from him. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rahul sir. So we are moving towards our technical session.
Invite the speaker.
Okay, so I'm gonna now invite the speakers. And I will now ask the session coordinator, Dr. Shubhan Mandal and Dr. Manoj Kumar, to invite our first speaker for this session, Dr. Indranil Mukhopadhyay, who is from Jindal Global University, India. So, Dr. Shubhan and Dr. Manoj, please. Thanks.
So, hello and welcome everybody. So, I now introduce our technical session first speaker, Dr. Indranil Mukhopadhyay. Dr. Indranil Mukhopadhyay has done his graduation in Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandir, Belur, and Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandir, Belur, and he has done his post-graduation and MPhil in Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has continued on his PhD from there, and then he was involved with Public Health Foundation of India for some time. Now he is an associate professor in Jindal Global University, Sonipat, Haryana, and also he is an advisor to WHO, World Health Organization, India chapter, and he's a kind of an auditor of this India chapter actually. So, and he has vast experience in public health management. Despite being an economics major who has done his PhD in health economics, he deals with public health management, and he has done it for quite long time. So it will be beneficial to hear from him what are the risks and what are the challenges and how to manage it in times of crisis like this. So without much further ado, I will try to it is all over to him, our first speaker, technical speaker. So can you sir? So, huh?
Shall I start?
You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Professor Udaykumar Yaragatti, the director of MNIT, Dr. Rahul Singhal, my dear friend and colleagues, Dr. Subhayan, Devashish, and other colleagues at MNIT, and all respected and dear participants. It's a great honor for me to be able to join this and share my thoughts. So to be frank, I'm feeling like a fish out of water currently because it's a August gathering of physicists, engineers, and data scientists. And I am an economist who learned a bit of public health and did his PhD in public health. So what I might say might be slightly different and slightly, the perspectives might vary, but what I feel when, if we are able to, if we really want to understand the current pandemic and its implications on lives and livelihoods of people, some of it Dr. Yaragatti has already mentioned, we need to really understand what public health means and what public health approach is. So my talk would largely be around what the pandemic means for people and the strategies that were taken to address the pandemic, the lockdown, what it meant to people's lives and livelihoods. And I would like to also explain or discuss with you what is the public health approach and how that can help us understand the current situation better. A lot needs to be talked about regarding the epidemiology, disease progression, the pathways, the modelings. I'm sure my other very capable colleagues would be my colleagues and friends, Suhayon and Kaushik, would take this up in tomorrow's sessions. What I'm going to do, like I said, I'll try to tell you a story about what public health means, and with this story, we'll try to develop an approach towards understanding public health crises, and then we'll see how that approach helps us understand lockdown and its implications, the strategy, and then we'll also spend some time discussing the what needs to be done, what are the future pathways. So a lot of what essentially are elements of risks and risk management precedes an understanding of what is public health and particularly public health approach. So if we look at say generally health and medicine, often there are very diverging ideas and views regarding what health means to people and what medicine is. And a dominant, very dominant paradigm of understanding health is to equate with medicine, and also a particular kind of understanding of medicine where human body is seen as a machine, and so and then any ailment or disease is seen as some kind of impairment of the in some parts of that machine or some part of our body, and that's where the medicines, the vaccines, the technology comes into play. And this approach is called a biomedical approach to understanding human health and human body. We would see that this is that this approach is important, but it has certain limitations. I'll try to untangle what I'm saying, but essentially the other approach is to see health from a public health perspective, where preventing diseases, prolonging lives, promoting health becomes crucial, but here organized efforts of society becomes important rather than, so here the plane or the point of interventions becomes the society, some of which our director has already placed before you, that there are public actions that becomes crucial rather than what is happening within the human body. So currently the understanding of that kind of understanding is very crucial, along with a very biomedical approach where the focus is on medicines. I would like to bring here is that a lot of our attention currently from people around who are not common people is around this thing that when would the vaccines come, when would the medicines get discovered, and that's the only way to get rid of this problem. Without vaccines and medicines, we cannot protect our lives. And I would like to take you down the history and try to tell you or try to share with you that there are things beyond medicines and vaccines and technology, medical technology particularly, which affect human life significantly and leads to improvement. Let us spend some time, few minutes, in trying to understand what this graph is. Basically, what I have done here is to project life expectancy at birth from a hypothetical situation of, say, England and Wales. And we have seen here the data is estimations of life expectancy from the most prehistoric period, from the Paleolithic period to, say, modern 21st century in England and Wales. Actually, in this part of the world, there are 200 odd years of history of, 300 odd years of history of proper documentation of deaths and lives and life expectancy calculations. But beyond that, there are these are mostly estimates based on projection. So what we see is here in this graph, the blue line goes up after remaining almost static for the entire history of human civilization in the last 200 years. From the middle of 19th century, we see that life expectancy is increasing. In between, there are periods of suddenty, like the Black Death Shuvayan has already mentioned, which was during the ascent of mercantilism and rapid movement of people. A lot of deaths happened, but more so in the mid-19th century, 1840 onwards, we see that life expectancy in England is increasing from 36 years in the 1800s. We see that in the span of 200 years, life expectancy has almost or more than doubled in UK. What happened? Why this happened? A very simple and very overwhelming answer to this question, wish we had, like Dr. Yaragatti has mentioned, wish we had the luxury to talk to you and ask this question and try to get a response from you. But in the absence, let me guess, and because I have already done this to many students, the overwhelming answer to this question is why life expectancy increased after mid-19th century in UK is that medicines and technologies emerged. There were scientific discoveries, and we had medicines, vaccines, technologies. So obviously that resulted in the improvement of life expectancy in this part. But I would like to, while not contesting that hypothesis entirely, I would like to point out some facts to you which might help you rethink that way of thinking. So, if we really think about the discovery of medicines and say the major killers in the large part of the human history were the communicable diseases like COVID, which spreads from one person to other. Some of these mentioned by Shuvayan earlier: cholera, the plague, tuberculosis. These are communicable diseases. They spread from one person to the other. And for a large part of the human history, we really didn't know how this happens, how diseases spread from one person to the other. So, and then if we really want to look at how, when medicines came to protect us from this kind of communicable diseases, role of antibiotics becomes crucial. But if you go back to your study of history in the in the class 10 textbooks or class 8 textbook, you'll see that the antibiotic is getting discovered in 1923 by Alexander Fleming, and and then it takes another 2 decades for the commercial production of antibiotic, and for then making use of that antibiotic to protect human lives. And the fact is, in that, even it took 30-40 years from first person to be able to identify germs through germ theory, which came in 1884. So before that, we didn't even know how germs, whether germs exist and how germs spread. So 1864, Louis Pasteur's experiment paved way for the germ theory, which was rather verified by Koch through Koch's postulates, which became very popular and laid to the foundation of understanding of how disease spreads. And before that, we didn't even have medicines. It took another 50 years to get medicines, antibiotics for human use. So what happened in this period of mid-19th century to mid or early 20th century, that life expectancy increased in this part of the world by 30 years. And to understand that, we need to really understand the public health approach that I'll come to. Okay, let us illustrate the point again through the use of tuberculosis. The same example of England and Wales, where we are here plotting the death rates per 1,000 due to tuberculosis. And we see that in the early 19th century, around 4 per 1,000 people were dying out of tuberculosis. And by the time of mid-20th century, 1950s, we see that only 2% per 10,000 people are dying out of tuberculosis. So huge decline in deaths due to tuberculosis is happening. But if you look at TB medicines, the streptomycin, which is one of the first chemotherapy that was developed, it came in 1943. So by that time, actually, tuberculosis deaths had reduced 10 times, 4 per 1,000 to 4 per 10,000 by the time chemotherapy comes. So, of course, subsequently, once the medicines come and then the vaccines come in early 1950s, we see much steady reduction in the death of people suffering from tuberculosis. In fact, the germ Microbacterium tuberculi was discovered in 1882. But we see that even before that, there are significant declines in tuberculosis deaths. And why so, I'll come to, but we'll take a different example. You may recall that I showed this to you, that early 19th century UK, it was also the time of Industrial Revolution. It was the time when a lot of people came from villages, countrysides to stay in the urban, the industrial towns of London, Manchester, and others, in a very congested pattern of living, thousands of people living in shanty slums and unhygienic inhabitations. And what was very frequent at that time was a disease called cholera. It was a fatal intestinal disease. It killed thousands of people in a very short period of time. And in the 19th century, it recurred time and again. And the understanding of, and the understanding of how cholera spread was very different from what science knows today. It was, if you look at this picture, which is a representation by Robert Seymour of the that it used to be like so it was called a miasma, that is a foul air, bad air, rotten air that kills people and that spreads cholera and kills people. That was the understanding that was there in the mid-18th century. And from there, one of the key very renowned physician of that time, Professor John Snow, who tried to understand how cholera spreads. And he actually led the foundation of a science which is called epidemiology. What is epidemiology? Is the study and analysis of distribution, patterns, and determinants of health and disease conditions in population. So, what are the diseases which kill people? How do the people get killed? Who gets killed more? Suffers more? How the disease spread? It's that science is called epidemiology. It's a foundation for public health, and I'll show you that even before the discovery of the Vibrio cholerae germ, liver the medicines that were necessary to treat people from cholera, we saw deaths due to cholera reduced because of the interventions Dr. John Snow made. What did he do? He didn't know how the germ spread. He didn't have any medicines. He didn't even know the current understanding was it is spreading through air. So what does he do? What Dr. Snow does is he looks at each of the deaths. He inquires surveys every family in London and try to understand where they are located and put a black dot in the map for each of the deaths. This is a map of London, a particular area of old London. It's near Oxford Street and Regent Street, where he saw that the maximum deaths are happening. What he could identify is that there is a certain cluster where all the deaths are happening. In today's language, this will be called the hot spot, where most of the affected people stay. So what does he do? And then he's trying to understand why would these particular set of people are getting affected. What is particular about them? So with some ruling out of air and other forms of infections, spread of the infection, what he realized that water could be a major source of infection. How did he realize? He tried to understand where the water sources are. And this small black squares are the sources of water where people used to draw water from at the time of cholera epidemic. And then he could really understand that this red marked part is where the pump around which most of the affected people are staying. So there would be something with this water pump that is causing the major problem, that is contaminating people. So there must be some problem with the water. Then he tried to go back to the source of that water, where it's getting water from. What he realized here is that there are, so you may know, for your recollection, London is it's situated by the bank of River Thames. And what was understood is that all the other water pumps that are visible in that map, they were drawing water from the upstream of River Thames, which means, and this particular pump station was drawing water from the downstream of River Thames. What does upstream and downstream of the River Thames means? That all those who are fetching water from upstream are getting cleaner water. But then, because at that time, all the sewage used to go back to River Thames, and the other pump was pulling water which is contaminated with sewage. This was a very crucial discovery at that point. He didn't know what the germ is, he didn't know how it spreads, but he realized that it is there in human guts, it is spreading through somewhere through feces and water. So he realized that you have to stop exposure to the contaminated water on a large scale. Stop exposure to the entire supply of contaminated water in the area. So whether first was the idea that whether entire area should be identified and quarantined from that water source, or shall we try to do it specifically? Then he realized that this particular source of water is the problem. What is the solution? Does he discover the medicine for cholera? No. What he does is he makes two very simple suggestions to people. One, to individuals, he asks all the people to drink boiled water, domestically boiling of water and consume it. And what he did to the authorities was to actually say that instead of pulling water from Thames River, draw groundwater. These are the famous groundwater sources, the hand pumps that are still existing in some parts of the city of London. If you go today, you will see. And these simple technological innovation, this saved millions of lives and remains a major contribution of improvement in life expectancy that we see in England and Wales. Of course, at the same time, there were other changes happening in the lives of working people. Their livelihoods increased, their wages increased, they were given better housing to stay safe, eat healthy. All of that contributed to improvement in life expectancy. But that is not the issue with us. What I want to re-emphasize is that even before the medicines and vaccines got discovered, we saw significant improvements in life expectancy and reduction in deaths. This is not to say that medicine and technology do not play a role. They have a very, very, very key role in improvement in human lives, but human health is not only about medicines and vaccines and technology. It has many other approaches. What is important for us is to, in contrast to a biomedical approach to improvement of human health, what is available to us today even is a public health approach, and it works in a particular matter of scientific inquiry, a pattern of scientific inquiry, and that is what is very crucial for us to appreciate and implement in the context that we live in. What John Snow did and what is still valid and has gone through somewhat improvements subsequently is that he tried to first identify what is the problem. In today's parlance, we call it disease surveillance. So what is the problem means who are getting affected, where do they stay, what are they doing, all of that you get to know through disease surveillance. You try to track diseases in population. And then what is the cause? John Snow actually ruled out various other causes. He said miasma theory is not relevant for most of the diseases. You need to understand what is the cause of the disease. So risk factor identification is crucial. For the current context of COVID, like our director has already mentioned, it's largely through droplets that the disease is spreading, though aerosols and spreading through air particles, smaller particles are not ruled out. But we now know that the risk is those who go to congested settings, who sneeze, and who do not wash hands. So we have actually identified the cause of the disease to some extent. And then what John Snow did is to try to identify what works. So what are the interventions available and evaluation of various interventions. And if we look at the current context, world context, there are several such interventions are going on simultaneously. Countries, states, regions, learning from each other, different international organizations are working to disseminate current state of knowledge, what works, what doesn't work. And one of the key strategies that was developed and implemented was what is called the lockdown. What was the idea behind this lockdown? Basic idea was to actually slow down disease progression, slow down, reduce human movements, and through stopping of human movements and ensuring that people stay at a distance, which was erroneously called social distancing, but what was meant was physical distancing, where people stay at a distance and so that the disease progression slows down and the health systems get more time to be able to protect others from getting the disease, from getting infected by the disease, and also from those who are protect and save those who are suffering from the disease currently, who are already infected. So the basic idea of lockdown was not to cure or not to ensure that the pandemic dies, but to actually slow down disease progression. So I'll talk a bit about whether that happened or not. But so similarly, like I'm trying to draw parallel from John Snow's experience to current situation. Then how do we do it? There are several strategies that have been talked about, discussed extensively in media. Some of the key strategies that have come out are that you need to actually extensively screen people who have contacts, who have travel histories, who are close in touch with people who are suffering, and then post-screening you do tests for symptomatic people who have developed symptoms. You test them. Those who have not developed symptoms, you try to quarantine them. Quarantine means keeping them in a safe place so that they do not come in touch with others. And then who has symptoms, try isolate them, put in isolation facilities or put in home isolation. And then further to this, you try to, those who need more intensive treatment, who are feeling vulnerable, who have developed advanced symptoms like the elderly or those who have comorbidities like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, give them advanced levels of treatment, sometimes respiratory support like ventilators, or put them into ICU. So we really now have the science has advanced so much that within a span of a few months or even rather quicker, we could really figure out what works and what needs to be done. But a lot of theoretical knowledge, when it needs to be populated into policies and action, is where implementation is where there are challenges. And I'll talk about some of these in a few minutes from now. So, how does the current, if this is what a public health approach is, where we try to understand the problem, what is the cause, we know what works, and then we try to figure out how to do it. Can this help us understand the strategies of lockdown and what are the various other strategies which were complemented by the lockdown? With the lockdown, this is now very popular. This has actually the these graphs from worldometers have been extensively used by media and various research publications which show how the disease progression have been across countries by, say, daily number of cases and trying to identify when countries started the lockdown and when they ended, how the number of cases were emerging, and what you'll see in some of the most developed countries like Spain, Germany, Italy, and UK, the lockdown started fairly early, but also during the span of the lockdown, most of these countries could actually reverse the number of new cases by the time the lockdown ended in these countries. What we see in India is a particular situation where we had a very early initiation of the lockdown, but by the time the lockdown ended and subsequently we see that rather than going number of cases going down, we see more and more number of cases in few particular pockets in a very and in a very significant way. But what has happened due to lockdown, and obviously we need to keep in mind that we cannot compare Indian situation with countries like Spain, Germany, Italy, or UK because they are much more resource rich. They have much lesser population compared to India, and they have much better health system than what we have. But it is also important to look at the lockdown from a public policy perspective and also from a public health approach, which talks about understanding various dimensions of the problem and then and, then undertake a particular strategy. What has the doubling of death rates because of lockdown has actually the number of days it took for the number of deaths to be doubled has reduced in many countries due to lockdown and also in India. But what we see is post-lockdown, just immediately after lockdown, we saw that within 2 weeks our numbers actually doubled, and in subsequent 2 weeks we have seen the numbers quadrupling. So though the lockdown has to some extent slowed down the disease progression like it used to be in various parts of the world, we haven't been able to really contain the situation. And I'll give you my perspective in some time on how this happened. To do that, to understand why this happened, we need to really understand go back to our understanding and emphasize this point that their health is not only about biomedical interventions, but particularly it's a social determination of health. So what does social determination means? It means that everything that is there in human life, like how people work, how people stay, where do they stay, their housing conditions, the water they drink, the sanitation they use, the environment that they live in, whether it is polluted or not, the food they are eating, the kind of stress they are under, the kind of work stress or other kind of mental stress they are under, all of that affect our health, and our age affects health. In the current context of COVID, we know that the elderly people are the most vulnerable to respiratory severities, acute respiratory infections, and as a result, a lot of fatality in Europe has happened among these people. But the other crucial thing is, that's my main point, is that health is about how living and working takes place, and that is a particularly important understanding that needs emphasized, and any attempt to understand the living conditions of people would have resulted in better implementation of lockdown. So what was the basic idea of lockdown was to actually help people maintain certain degrees of physical distancing. But what we didn't probably appreciate as much was that in our conditions, it's really impossible to ensure physical distancing. And when the lockdown happened, a lot of people lost job and they didn't have any place to stay. They didn't have enough food to eat, and it was important that they go back in a situation of panic to their native places. And who are these people? They are the migrant workers. I'll come back to emphasize this point significantly, that a lot, and it is crucial for us to connect the public health approach and role of migrants, because a lot of our workforce are actually migrant workers, and those majority of them work in the informal settings. What means informal? They do not have proper job contracts, they do not have fixed wages, they do not have leaves, they do not have social security benefits. And once that lockdown happened, a lot of people, either many of you must be familiar with these visuals of thousands of people stranded under a river, in a river bank under a flyover, or they're walking down to their native place, or they are stranded in congested living conditions and wants to go back, either in walking down or through buses, taxis, or in very densely packed public transport. So I would like to spend few minutes here to emphasize this point, that our work happens, a lot of our work in the country depend on migrant workers. There are around 120 million migrant workers who move from villages, rural India to urban India. Mind you, there is a larger part of migrant workers who actually move from rural to rural area for agriculture and other works. But a lot of people come from states like UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, to places like Mumbai or Mumbai suburbs, cities like Surat, Bangalore, Thane, various parts of Delhi or the national capital region. So, and many of them actually earn very little, less than 5,000 rupees per month. They do not have any social protection, they do not have ration cards, and various surveys have shown that during the lockdown period, they didn't have any savings, they didn't have any food to eat, and they didn't have enough means to even go back to their native place. Okay. And if we look at who are the migrant workers, you will see certain very important characteristics emerging. A lot of them, among the 120 million migrant workers, there are 60 million children. A lot of them are girl children. They are working in most hazardous, difficult, regressive kind of work environment. Then another group of migrant workers are the Dalits and the scheduled tribes, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and they often work in the lowest strata of work, often work as, say, rag pickers, solid waste managers, in many other manual small work, which are often not remunerated. This the graph in the middle would give you a very interesting picture. If you look at women migrants, who are they, where are they, and look at where they work, you will see that among the white collar jobs, which are like more formal jobs where salaries are more, there are proper job contracts, the 2/3 of the women are actually from upper caste, whereas only 18% are but in these jobs there are only 18% schedule of the total scheduled caste women workers. There are only 19% in the white collar job, and rests are all in the informal, either blue or informal work. So actually, more women migrant workers from upper caste go to formal white collar jobs, but when it comes to Dalits, scheduled tribes, and OBCs, they are much less. So they are working in the lowest wage strata in the informal sector, and that's how they are often vulnerable to poverty. If we look at India's poverty figures, we have a poverty line, and if a person consumes less than that line, we call that person poor. And if we look at a situation of before lockdown, we'll see that in rural areas, 47% of people were actually poor before the lockdown started, and in urban area, this is around 31%. But because of the lockdown and jobs got ruined at this time, there were no jobs. We see that in rural area, we have run a simulation exercise here to understand the implication of various sectors in the rural area and urban area to estimate that almost 8 out of 10 people in rural area would be under grip of poverty currently, 78.5%. In urban area, this is almost 60%, 57%. If we look at the numbers, these are 40 crore people who would be pushed below poverty due to lockdown, due to this extraordinary situation. And the other crucial thing is that half of them, almost 47% of the people, live in extreme poverty. Of these people, of the entire population, now would live in extreme poverty. Extreme poverty means making your means work within 30 rupees per day. So you, in total, you get to spend 30 rupees per day. Those who spend less than 30 rupees a day would be called people with extreme poverty. And in the country, there would be around 62 crore people who would be in extreme poverty. And if we add the existing numbers, pre-lockdown numbers, with the additional 40 crore who are going to be pushed below poverty, the total number would be around 95 crores. So out of them, 62 crore would be living in extreme poverty, and most of them would be in the informal work, or they are self-employed. They have their own small shops, some manual work they do, and then the majority of them would be the various deprived sections. Another key aspect of this needs to be highlighted here is that the burden of the lockdown is going to be on women very particularly for various reasons. One of the key reasons is that the burden of domestic work would be falling on women more. There are many cases, there are many reports that domestic violence also has increased during this period of time. And then also because of the lockdown and lack of jobs, the burden to feed the family still rests on women, and they are in a very desperate situation. Not to say that others are not. I'm saying that women would be particularly vulnerable. And another important category of women are the health workers, the frontline health workers, our ASHA workers, the volunteers, the Anganwadi workers, the nurses, the ANMs, those who are a close touch with people in health sector. They're going to in hospitals. They're in touch with people. Those who are going door to door to check whether you have fever or whether you are good. They are the worst sufferer of this, because a lot of them have got infection in this process, and majority of them are women. But the basic point here is that if we really wanted the lockdown to work better, we should have arrived at strategies which can protect these sections of our population better. The informal workers, and majority of them are Dalits, OBCs, and Muslims, and also women, so that the public health aspects of the lockdown could be mitigated better. Now, what needs to be done? What can be done? And here, I would like to emphasize on some very key aspects of public health system in the country, and also I would like to bring out other policies which are relevant to our context. What has happened in this period is that we have realized that a lot of the action that is taking place in the health sector are from the government sector. And the global experience and also experience in the country, within the country, has shown that the parts of the country where there were better public health system, we have been able to address the situation better. For instance, Kerala is a major model for many developing countries today because of the good public health system that they have. And what I am going to do here is to basically talk about some of the key aspects of the public health system that needs strengthening in this entire period. So, public health systems are complex systems. It starts from the grassroots worker who goes to your areas and does basic cleaning or does fogging when there are mosquitoes, or goes door to door to check whether you have fever for COVID. They're the frontline workers, but at the same time, it has the most sophisticated, highly skilled, super specialty doctors and surgeons who take care of human beings at emergency. And in between, you will see a wide range of providers, pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical product producers, or the laboratories, the ambulance services, the blood banks, the hospitals. All of them are part of the public health system. And what is crucial here is to actually strengthen the bottom part of that public health system, which is called the primary care system. What is primary care? In a very simple terminology, primary care is the first contact point with population. So the person who screens people for fever, or who goes, what if there is a local doctor whom you go to when you have some complaint, or the nurse that a mother goes to when she has to deliver a child during pregnancy. So they are the primary care providers, and barring few services, what has happened in India in the last few decades is that primary care infrastructure, the human resources, have not grown significantly. And that particularly in the urban area. And in urban area, there is this particular dichotomy that there are huge tertiary care hospitals, but there are not adequate primary care institutions. That kind of irony we see in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, or in Ahmedabad, where there are many cases, but what is lacking is a primary care approach. And here, what Kerala has done is important for us to understand and notify. They have the most extensive primary care system in the country. They have more nurses, doctors at the primary level. But what is important is they involve communities very significantly in this entire process. And what they have done is, in the context of COVID, they have got in touch with the local communities to identify who had traveled, whom they contacted. So in contact tracing, in isolation, when a household is in quarantine, providing them with rations, food, and other necessities, the local communities have been made very active, and that has actually helped the state do better, and many other states are actually adopting that model gradually. But what is needed is to understand that there are various dimensions of the problem, and we need to focus on this. What has other key thing that has happened, and that has come through various news reports, though there are no so-called scientific studies, is that many other services like tuberculosis, dialysis, cancer, childbirth, these services have been affected very significantly due to this lockdown period. And these are the routine health services, but not all are routine, but there are dialysis, cancer services which are life-saving. They haven't been able to, they have not been delivered, and led to a major difficulty for many people suffering from these diseases. Though we may think that these diseases are not crucial, but they also are important at this current juncture. And if we had a comprehensive primary care system which takes care of all the problems, we could have done better. There is a recent initiative by the government to set up health and wellness centers at the primary level, where all the various diseases would be taken care of. If we had such a system before, we could have really tackled this better, this situation. But this is an important initiative, needs to be strengthened. Other crucial thing that I want to draw your attention to in this situation is the role of frontline health workers. It was in the initial phase of lockdown, we had celebrated their role significantly. But what we have seen over time is that the frontline health workers, the nurses, ASHAs, ANMs, the public health workers, they have really worked overtime in this period, often putting their personal comfort, their lives at risk, and dealing with patients, often without some of the protective equipments, hand chemicals, and life-saving equipments with them. They have been in the forefront of this war and delivering the services. But what has happened also, they have undergone significant stress in this process, and also there are sporadic instances where women ASHA workers have been manhandled and badly treated, and such. While the country celebrates the health workers, it is important that we give them proper wages. We fill all the human resource vacancies. We give them dignity of their work they deserve, the leaves they deserve, the social security benefits they deserve. So one of in the country as overall, there are huge deficits of human resources. It's quite often mentioned that we need more doctors, more nurses in the country. If we look at carefully, these are doctors and nurses per 10,000 people in various states of the country. We'll see that there are huge variations within the country. There are states like, say, Punjab, Maharashtra, Kerala, where there are probably more than 10 doctors per 10,000 population, whereas states like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Bihar, where there are less than 3 or slightly above 3 doctors per 10,000 people. So, though we have overall our doctor population ratio is slightly above the WHO World Health Organization norm, but there are states where there are significant deficits. And when we are talking about creating a better health system, we need to actually see that more doctors, nurses are there in these states, not in because there are surpluses in other regions, and it is very difficult for doctors to move from one state to the other. It's important that we fill gaps in some of these crucial states, and where we see that gradually the focus is shifting to these states from the metropolitan city. Okay. Other crucial thing is that there are huge disparities in the health infrastructure in the country, and I am bringing some very crude indicators to depict this point. If you look at how many villages in a state have one health facility, you'll see, and I have mentioned this earlier also, all villages in states like Kerala have one health facility or the other. In Goa, almost 60%. In Jammu Kashmir, Tamil Nadu, which are better performing states, have almost 2/3 of the villages will have some kind of health facility. And if we compare with states like Uttarakhand, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, UP, West Bengal, you will see that there are huge gaps. Many villages do not have a primary basic health facility that's needed. In context of pandemic, to provide basic services, you need them. And if you look at bed density, hospital beds, because also you need secondary and tertiary care to isolate people, to give them ICUs and other facilities. There also exists huge variation across states, and what we need is to fill these fill these gaps and bring out new facilities, create new facilities, more beds as soon as possible in order to avoid such recurrence of such pandemic. But how would you do it? One of the key pathways have been to actually increase public spending on health. When we public spending mean how much government spends on health, and what we see is when government spends more, we'll see that there is less need for people to spend from their pocket. And when people spend their pocket, it is basically whoever can afford gets health care, and who cannot afford gets denied care. And that's seen as a very regressive kind of a system. And what we see in many countries, as they invest more, this graph shows the country situation, all countries in the world, how much they're spending as a percentage of GDP, and what is the share of out-of-pocket expenditure has been plotted in the two axes, and the dots are each country. And what we see is India is on the top left, meaning that public spending on health is one of the lowest in India, whereas a lot of people need to spend money from their own pocket. So if 100 rupees is spent on health, 2/3, 66 to 70 rupees come from people's pocket, which is a very, very high number, and many countries have been able to reduce their out-of-pocket burden through public investment. Say if we compare India with, say, some of the countries around the world, say, because we see ourselves as global superpower, emerging economies in the world, and we compete with other big countries of Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, along with India. If we compare Indian public spending on health with some of these countries, we'll see the panel on the left is per capita public spending on health. You will see that India spends only $60 per person on health, whereas countries like South Africa, China, Russia spend at least 5 to 8 times compared to India, even sometimes 10 times compared to India. One may say these are not comparable, but because they are richer countries. But China, which is one of India's competitors, actually spend much more compared to India. What we need is to actually expand this. And if we compare India with some of our neighboring Asian countries like, say, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, we see that public spending is much higher in these countries compared to India. And what is needed for us is actually to expand public spending significantly so that we are able to build some of the good public health system, and in future and also in current times deal with the situation and this misery that we are facing in a significant way. Okay, what is also needed and that is linked to the Atmanirbhar Bharat is that we need actually to strengthen the public sector manufacturing of medicines and equipments. We might know that India is the pharmacy of South, global South. We produce a lot of medicines in the and export in many developing countries, but we do not produce as many equipments or the basic ingredients which are called the active pharmaceutical ingredients, pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, or the major salts, which are essential ingredient for production of medicines. We don't produce that domestically. So we need, when we saw the situation of initial days of COVID, we had to depend on other countries for PPEs, for masks, for test reagents, because we were not able to produce these as much. Whereas countries like Korea or Vietnam could do much better in that respect, even China. So what is important is while trying to build this self-reliance, we need to strengthen our public sector units so that they can help other private sector companies to grow far more stronger. And that is where probably places like MNITs play a very crucial role in providing the technological know-how for the public sector to do better. Okay. Other crucial thing is that I talked about this earlier, that the disease surveillance becomes a very key aspect of public health, and we need to strengthen this. What is disease surveillance? It helps you identify where there are cases, you get to report them, what kind of mortality is happening, what kind of test needs to be done. And that data, disease surveillance data, helps us in the local planning at the district level or at the municipal corporation or at the village level to be able to identify hotspots, to be able to understand the pattern of spreading of the disease. In India, we have integrated disease surveillance project. What is needed is that we make that data available to public health planners at the district level, at the block level, at the municipal corporation level, but we don't see that data very readily available. And it is important that we actually use this, strengthen this system in this period so that in future and in current condition also, we can trace the disease progression better and take remedial action. Okay. What is, okay, in the entire management of COVID, apart from state governments, local bodies need to play a very critical role. And as we see, major hotspots or major areas of disease progression are the metropolitan cities, and municipal corporations in these cities play different roles and diverse roles, and that's where a lot of action depends. And one of the good example of a thorough action by local bodies, urban local bodies, municipal corporations, is what happened in Dharavi, one of the largest slums of the world or in Asia, where a lot of people stay in a very, very congested setting where physical distancing is impossible to imagine. And we saw that there were many, many cases of COVID positive in Dharavi slum area a month or half ago. And what we saw is that the local corporation took a very key strategy, which is worth emulating in other contexts. What they did is actually went to every household in the slum and did extensive screening for fever. Every person in the slum area were screened properly, and then those who had fevers, there were temporary fever clinics that were set up in Dharavi, and the picture below shows what the fever clinics look like. They were very simple clinics with doctors and professionals in place, not much infrastructure, so not a huge investment needed. But every person that who were tested, who screened and had fever, were sent to this fever clinic, and then those and then after a thorough examination by doctors, if they were needed, the people who needed further consultation, they were sent for tests, and all of these people who had fever were actually quarantined in a different location so that they cannot do not come back and spread the disease. And this way, within a period of 15-20 days, Dharavi could contain a lot of disease progression through very simple methods of screening, contact tracing, and with fever clinics, which are very foundation of management of any flu. And then if needed, they refer people to secondary hospitals or isolation centers or tertiary hospitals for treatment. And this way, they could effectively contain the spread of the pandemic. Okay, what is also needed, and there are certain aspects of this already in the public domain, and the economic relief package by the government talks about some of these aspects, and probably these needs further strengthening. And this where actually, if you some of you know, in India there is a program with an act which is called Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee, Rural Employment Guarantee Act, where everyone who needs a job can go to a public facility and go to the panchayat and seek 100 days employment. When a lot of people have gone back to their villages, migrant workers, they would need some means to survive, and their livelihoods need to be supported. There are discussions of the relief package has expansion of Employment Guarantee Act. Discussion of the Employment Guarantee Act, but what is important is that all 90 million workers who would probably need work support be given 20 days of work for coming 6 months, and there are discussions in this regard. There is that and other crucial thing which is already taking place is the public distribution system, universalization of public distribution system. What is happening is a major expansion of public distribution system by the government, when all the ration card holders are given a free ration for, recently it has been extended till September, free ration should be given. But what is crucial is that there are a lot of people, the poorest of the people, who do not have any ration card, and they live in various urban areas in the most and work in the most difficult settings. They need ration support, and uh, they need to be brought under the public distribution system so that they get the desired support. But what is crucial is that we need to go beyond information technology based systems and reach out to people to be able to provide them the ration support they deserve. Okay. The other crucial thing is that in the urban areas also there is a lot of job cuts that are happening. A lot of people who have gone back from big metropolitan cities to their villages would not be able to come back in the short run because of the panic and also the fear of the disease and also that of transport. What they would do is they might look for jobs in district towns, in smaller cities. So in these areas also, and in urban metropolitan cities, we might need a better system of employment, and probably the Rural Employment Act needs to be complemented with an Urban Employment Guarantee Act. And here, probably some of these provisions of the Act where people get jobs or work for slightly higher wage compared to rural wage, but also they get to work in factories, small enterprises, and government gives them wage support. This will also help small enterprises because they are also suffering at this moment because of the lockdown, and they need subsidies. Though the economic relief package mentions about subsidies to these people, we need more from in terms of wage support. The other crucial aspect that I would like to highlight here is the role of social infrastructure in urban areas. What that the living condition of migrant workers have revealed is that the places where some of them live, most of them live, are urban slums which do not have proper sanitation, proper drinking water, proper place to stay, and we can the employment guarantee provision through Urban Employment Guarantee Act can be used to actually promote and create urban social infrastructure like water facilities, sanitation, housing, and urban parks, and many other things, so that not only their quality of life improves, their living standard improves, overall there is a upliftment in the living conditions of people in urban areas. So with these, I would try to recap our main contours of my discussion and emphasize that what is needed for us is a stronger public system, public health system, which is comprehensive, which is universal, which is for everyone in the country. But also, we need to put in more resources in areas of health care, and also try to give our health workers, like the Prime Minister has said, dignity, and also give them proper wages, proper full-time employment, probably permanent jobs so that they can do their work better. And we need public health actions which are intensive in nature, and there also we need to fill all the human resource vacancies at the grassroots level, and at the municipal corporations and local bodies, we need a lot of action, public health actions to be complemented. At the same time, in this period, we need a lot of support for those who are mostly affected by the lockdown to be able to survive and have a reasonably good quality of standard of living, so that when the economy goes back to normal and we see that gradually growth picks up, some of these people can uh, go back to their gainful employment and live a peaceful life. Other key aspect that I want to end with is that we need a system of health which is pro people and which have people at the center of it, and brings people's participation in a major way to overcome this public health challenge that we are facing today. with these words, I would close and again thanking the organizers once more for their giving me the opportunity to speak. I hope I have almost 1.5 hours I've spent, and I could hope this helped to understanding what needs to be done in this situation better. I'll hand over to the chair and moderator.
Okay, thank you, Indranil. I'm speaking with someone else's login and computer, but it's me, Shubhayan. So, thank you very much for a magnificent presentation. And the take home message that I received from here is that in India, the challenges are different, so the solutions should also be different, because in social or physical distancing, as you say it is possible only when we have some society, we have some houses, we have something to live in or live into. So if you don't have houses, social or physical distancing become meaningless. And there are other issues like population densities and lack of infrastructure, sanitation facilities. So so let us not go into those details. You have talked about them at length. So I thank you on behalf of the, since there is no physical audience here, I thank you on behalf of the audience, and then I let the house to be open for questions. So if there are some questions, they can directly this chat box in the YouTube link or something. So the audience can chat in the YouTube link. There are moderators who will transfer it to your desktop. So, so who will moderate? Me or
Shubhayan, is it possible that somebody speaks out, reads out the question, or it would be appearing on the text box?
Okay, so I will go to the YouTube and I will read it out for you. Then yeah, somebody will read it out for you. So that will be, I think, better.
Really great.
Exactly.
That would be great.
So as of now, the chat box in the YouTube looks still empty. But let us wait for some time. Let us wait for 5 minutes, because there is a maybe 2 minutes lag from this Meet to YouTube channelization, because I have seen up to 2 slides delay. One slide is normal, but I have seen even 2 slides delay. If somebody is writing something, we should wait for 5 minutes at least. Apurva Gupta. What is that? So I think in our meet box we have a question. It is from Apurva Gupta. Urban Employment Guarantee Program suggestion may lead to problem highlighted in Todaro paradox. Any thoughts on this? So it's up to you. Please.
Yeah, so basically, this is a very interesting question, and it's one of the fundamental issues of migration and Aristotle, where even if you create an employment in the urban area, you may not see that urban wages go up. And that's actually the precise situation in the country today, is that though there are huge reserve army of workers in both rural and urban area, we don't see people adequately, the wages in urban areas are adequately remunerated. Well, and in this current context, we have to also keep in mind that demand is a major constraint, because people do not have adequate purchasing power to be able to actually have basic consumptions level sustained. So what is crucial here is to in some way provide some demand relief so that demand curves move upward, And then when you have other supply side measures to in production, in some way there is equilibrium. With such lack of demand that is prevailing currently, I don't see Todaro paradox taking shape. It's more crucial for us to actually appreciate that current situation of demand deflation needs to be addressed significantly and very categorically.
So thank you for answering the first question. So the next question is from YouTube, is from Rajat Singhal. He asks that 40 crore people are pushed to poverty during lockdown. What is the source of this data? So he is okay. So go ahead, please.
Okay, so basically, this is a recent work paper that I'm working on. This is from Periodic Labor Force Survey that has come out very recently. It's my current work. It's not yet published, but this is one of the first time I'm presenting the result. What we are doing here is to run a simulation on livelihoods of various kinds of people. Say in the rural area, there could be agriculture workers, the self-employed, the non-agriculture workers. In urban areas, people working in the formal sector, informal sector, and in various sectors, the impact of the lockdown on their wages and income would be different. So we have tried to assess what could be the possible impacts on their wages, and then use those stimulations to actually see how their consumption pattern would as a result get affected, and if the consumption goes down below what is prescribed poverty line, will count them as poor. So it is not a published result, but we have produced first set of results, and I thought it is important that I share this with you. It will come. We have submitted this, and hopefully in some time will see light of the day, and we can share the results in greater detail. But the basic point is it's from the unique data of Periodic Labor Force Survey.
So thank you very much again. So there is a second question. There are actually a series of questions. Second question from YouTube, third question in total. It says that how we can guarantee employment to migrant people during this pandemic.
So the issue here is that if we have a comprehensive employment guarantee, both urban and rural areas together, this can be done. And we can use, currently the Aadhaar cards are being used to see who has migrated, who has not, and that can be the basis of employment guarantee. That's one. The other thing is, as I said, the pattern of migration is going to change now. From because a large, if you look at some of the graphs that I have shown you earlier, a large chunk of the migrants were coming towards few pockets, like say parts of Delhi and National Capital Region, Bombay and its suburbs, and other districts, some of the industrial districts of Maharashtra, industrial districts of Gujarat. So, and then of course Chennai, Bangalore also attracts migrant workers, and Kerala. But then now the existing pattern was long migration from people from Northeast, from Bengal, from Jharkhand, Bihar, UP, migrating 1,000 miles to go to other part of the country. This is going to change now, and migration will be more in the. So they will go in search of jobs in the smaller towns, in the district towns, in the state headquarters, in the interim period, before migrating further if they don't get enough employment. So with Aadhaar and other benefits, actually it is possible to cater to the employment situation through employment guarantee.
So thank you for answering the question of Pramila Mohan. So next question is from Kamlesh Sharma. He asks, in a country like India where a large population lives in a very, he might have said in a very poor and unhygienic conditions, what do you think that government can do for such people?
Okay. Thanks. This was part of my presentation, but I would some of the points I should repeat.
Reiterate.
See, we really need to think about giving a large majority of working people who live in slums some dignified standard of living, which is not for only for the benefit of the people. This is good for the entire country, because with say proper sanitation, proper drinking water, better conditions of living, you can actually and better food, you can improve productivity of your labor force. You can make them more gainfully employed with education. So what we can do is we can use employment guarantee or other schemes to actually build the urban infrastructure, particularly catering to the slums, so that people live in better conditions, and then that helps them also overcome any shock or pandemic or any other emergencies. A lot can be done in this regard, I think, and it is not like huge investments. We are trying to calculate what are the kinds of investment needed for, say, to give all the slum dwellers some kind of quality habitation. But it's something which is worth investing, thinking about the long-term gains of the society.
So that is okay. Thank you for answering the question of Kamlesh Sharma. So the next question is by Mohanraj M, but I could not understand his question properly, so I will leave that part out. And there is again another question by Kalavati Saini. She asks that what is the source of the data taken regarding the number of migrants? But I don't think that you have to answer this, because that answer was already given to Rajat Singhal.
So, the migration data is from census.
Acha, the migration data is from census. Acha, okay.
Poverty is from the PLFS survey.
Okay. So thank you for clearing my misconception.
If I missed some of the sources, it is an error on my part, and I should apologize to the.
So one quick question by Kalavati Saini again. She asks that have you any idea regarding behavior of virus during rainy time? Do you think you are capable of answering this question, or?
No, I'm not actually. I'm not a virologist.
Okay. So I will leave both this question of Kalavati Saini apart. So again another quick question, Satantra Dubey, is this COVID cases affected by the environmental factors? I'm not sure if this question is good or not.
No, it's an important question.
Okay.
So if we look at, say, this is important because we need to go back to our discussion on social determinants. What shapes our health? And why environment? See, we have already talked about how this disease came to India. It came through people who traveled abroad, and they were people living in better conditions. They are the ones who could afford their work. They travel foreign, so they are relatively better off people. But then gradually we see that the poorer sections of the society are getting affected. We cannot say that the germ spreads through environment, but the living condition and the environment and you live in actually makes you more susceptible to transmission of the disease, because physical distancing becomes difficult in many contexts. So how environment works varies. The environment doesn't only mean the air. It means how closely, how proximately you live with others. So I would expand that definition and include possibility of physical this country.
So, due to some shortage of time, I will now join two questions together. One from Anuj Meena and one from Mehak Hafiz Bhatt. So Anuj Meena says that I want to, but his question actually reads like more like a statement. I want to ask you, sir, after lockdown, so many workers or people migrated urban to rural areas because of this lockdown. So India employment opportunities are very low and it's also affect our GDP per annum. This is Anuj Meena. Then Mehak Hafiz Bhatt says, what needs to be done to revive the declining economy and low GDP in country when already COVID cases are increasing maybe alarmingly, she wanted to say. So I think I should tag these two questions together.
Okay, these are important questions, and these are questions that are in our mind currently. What I would say are mere, I would say they are not even estimates, my assumptions based on the understanding of the economy. There are these particular crisis, three aspects of the crisis. On one hand, we do not have money in people's hand to be able to spend on various things. Why that is important? Because when we spend, as when we earn money and we spend, we buy something. When we buy something, somebody gets to sell it, and then when somebody gets to sell it, somebody has produced it, and when somebody has produced it, they have used 10 other things to produce it. So when we buy something, we are not meeting our needs, but we are actually creating a chain kind of reaction in the economy and everyone benefits. Currently, a major crisis is in the demand front. We don't have enough money in people's hand to be able to spend. And then also in the demand for investment. So what those who run business, they don't know what is the future. So even if bank gives them loans, they are not willing to take loans because they don't know what they will do with them. So the crucial thing here is to actually address the demand side of the economy, give people greater purchasing power. So that's where employment guarantee becomes a major source. There are talks about giving people some kind of cash benefit so that they can spend. That's important, but I feel that a scheme like employment guarantee can also help the supply side. Factories can employ some of the workers and get work done when government subsidizes their employment. That's one part of the story. That's the second part of the story. The third important element is how would government fund these resources? Because the GDP is going down, we don't have taxes. Recently, the latest estimate showed that the GST collection has gone down significantly in the month of April, and it's likely to go down further in the month of May. So many people might ask, on one hand you are saying government should do 10 things, on the other hand you are saying there is no money. How do government spend on things? So here I would like to say that there government, apart from taxing people, what government can do in extreme emergencies and humanitarian crisis is it can borrow from abroad, borrow from people, or even print money. In today's time, printing money doesn't mean you need to really print cash notes. What you need is create currency, give some of the gold that you have in your reserve, and from RBI you get more currency. What will that do is it can give this money to people, and then you can actually stimulate demand. And in this situation where the economy needs more demand, this is not a very bad idea. Though in most of the situations, people might say printing money is not harmful for the economy. This is not the case now.
So thank you for answering the question of Anuj Meena and Mehak Hafiz Bhatt. So I will take one more question, but before that, and I will close the session with that. But before that, I will myself try to answer few people's question which are probably not pertinent to the section, but you correct me if there is anything to add. So Himanshu Dikshit, he asked that we never had vaccines for previous pandemics. Why vaccine program is so much essential for current pandemic? So I think our speaker is not a virologist, so it is not pertinent for him to answer this question at the current moment. Again, then Roshan Raj, he asked that what should be the role of industrial companies owners must be played during this migrant crisis. So we are not an advisory body to industrialists, so we should also not take this question at the moment. So then again, Vishal says, why is recovery rate of India is much better than other countries? Again, this is a question that doctors are better placed to answer. And I will take one more question only, which is from Abrar Ahmed. It is observed that proper planning was not prepared before immediate imposing of first lockdown. So, would you like to answer that question?
Okay, Shubha,
That will be the last one actually.
So basically, I would tend to agree with the person who is asking this question that and there are issues here. Of course, we needed, as we can see now, post facto, we can see that probably we preponed the lockdown a bit. We could have really postponed it for a few days, done some preparation, particularly pertaining to how to protect people. And how to ensure that physical distancing is possible. There could be several things done there. One could be, we have a very competent armed forces who are always, who actually are best suited for any emergency response. If there is a flood, we could have deploy armed forces to
NDRF, etc.
Rehabilitate people who are living in congested areas and take them to places, isolation centers or quarantine places. We could have used public facilities like schools, colleges, malls, stations, railway compartments to give people better possibilities of physical distancing. And then you could have also probably created a better supply of food grains. You could have better stocked it at the local level. That was another major concern. With this, you could have actually designated isolation places where you could have done your public health actions better. You could have screened people, you could have tested people, we could have quarantined and also take more action, whatever action is needed. So we should have thought some elements better and implemented. But I would like to also say that in many pandemics and historically, if you see, what is important is that we don't harp too much upon the past mistakes, because here public health is about learning by doing. So it is important that, because you don't know, the science of the pandemic was not clear to us. I would say that we need to, as we make mistakes, the international bodies are making mistakes, national governments are making mistakes, we need to acknowledge this is where we faltered,
learn
and
from our mistakes,
course corrections and move ahead. That is, I would suggest, is the pathway, rather than harping on what went wrong.
Exactly. We should not place blame.
If we really want to learn from the history of pandemics, we should learn that we need to learn from our mistake and change things, because every virus is new. What to do to learn how humans behave in such conditions, because we behave similarly in such conditions. Our behavioral patterns are quite straightforward. And what government should do to motivate, to regulate, to incentivize human behavior. Those are the learnings we can take from the history.
So thank you for answering to the last question. And on behalf of the organizing committee, our institute, the audience at large, both in this country and abroad maybe. So I thank the speaker wholeheartedly for this magnificent talk and taking so many questions, pertinent questions, answering them at length. So I thank the speaker on my personal behalf too. And let us close this session for today. We will be go on the air again tomorrow at 10 o'clock IST, Indian Standard Time. Thank you very much.
Thanks. It was a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You are most welcome. Chai.